Welcome to the podcast Crash, Burn, Rise Again, where we share stories of burning out and rebuilding better. Join myself, Shireen Lister, your host, and my special guests as we share our personal journeys through burnout, stress, overwhelm, and more, and show how we came out the other side. Learn and leverage from the lessons and wisdom we gained along the way so we can help you to rise too. Okay, hello and welcome everyone to episode 4 of the podcast. I'm your host, Shireen, and I'm here with another beautiful guest today, the lovely Katherine Newland. Hi, Kath. Thank you for being on with me today.
Hi, Shireen. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited to have you as well. I'm loving that I get to connect with lots of people in business and learn everyone's stories through doing this. So it's the pleasant surprise I wasn't expecting from the podcast. So Kath, you are a life coach like myself, but what's really beautiful about what we do is we all have different specialties and areas. And I know you work with women in their midlife stage of life. So can you share with the audience a little bit about how you help those women?
Sure. I help midlife women lead lives they love through my coaching. I do that because I started actually down this track. I used to coach men for a while, actually. But when I got to midlife myself, I realized that there is so many changes and so many, you have so many physical changes, but also changes in your situation as well. So you might have aging parents, or you might be an empty nester, or you've got hormonal changes going on, and you're actually asking, well, what's next for me? And often we've given so much as a woman to everything else, we're actually left a little bit empty-handed and with lots of wants and dreams, and really they don't know how to get that, what they want. So that's how I help facilitate that, and I love it. And just the joy of seeing women break through, their boundaries and things like that, and to start living a life that they really want, and knowing they've got lots of time left to do that.
Oh, yeah, beautiful. And I think that's an important one. Time. We often think, oh, it's this far and I still haven't done all those things that I wanted to do. And I think especially as women, we sometimes put ourselves and our dreams on hold, don't we? Particularly if we have kids and family and where we play that supporting role so well. And then this is a stage really where women can step into their own. But yeah, I can imagine can feel a little bit lost as to how to do that on their own. So I think it is fantastic there is people like you to help them through that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and who knows, I'm not quite at that stage. I might need that in time. Hopefully I can keep focusing on me and others through that. Yeah.
Yes. Well, having been, had your own burnout experience, that's often like a catalyst for some of those changes earlier, and that can set you up better for that midlife. So, wherever you are now, it's a great place to start, actually. The truth be known.
Thank God. Good.
Yeah.
And I think that's sometimes a forgotten key as well when we talk about burnout. Like I've spoken about it in terms of the things going on in our external world or our emotional things that are going on, as I think you'll tap into. But sometimes it's those changes in our physiology as well. So I talked about how my mental state hurt my body, but it can be those changes in hormones can sometimes just really throw us out of whack as well, can't it? And it could be what leads down a path of burnout when we weren't expecting it, or a path of different sorts of feelings. So I think that's super important that we're aware of change and we can sort of try and lean into it and get support from people like you wherever we can.
Yeah, most definitely. It's vital. It's vital because denial is the worst form, which I'll probably tell you about later as we go along.
Oh, I've been there as well. Yeah. There's nothing wrong at all. We're just trying to push it under the carpet as much as we can sometimes, because that's what's familiar, and familiar is comfortable for a while. And I think it takes until it hurts so much more sometimes before we do anything about it. And for some of us, like me, as I've shared in other episodes, that was a long time before it hurt too much. I'm a very slow learner. I don't know about you. We'll learn more of your story, but I was damn slow.
Me too.
So I am curious a bit about the background to what led you to burnout. So I know yours has had some emotional elements definitely to it, as well as some choices in terms of work and stuff that you're doing and throwing yourself into things. Can you share a little bit of that story of how burnout first happened for you?
Okay. Well, mine was actually, I feel like it's like reflecting on this, it was a long road. So actually, I believe it sort of started when I was like quite in, in my formative years from my family of origin, really. So I grew up on a farm. It was a very, it was a dairy farm. It was a lot of hard work. And, how hard work is how you proved your value in our house. So that was how I grew up. And that's how, I suppose got love from my family, or my father in particular. I worked really, really hard. That was physically and also, at school and things like that. So that was the beginning. And that was quite stressful now, looking back on it. It was quite a stressful environment growing up. So I sort of just took that with me. And then I took it with me because I got married. I got in a relationship quite young and I got married, and I really took all that stress with me. And then I started working in the wine industry, and there was a lot of late nights and long hours, and I just worked to prove my worth again, to gain people's favor, to be liked, to be, to prove my worth was who I was in that work, my role. So I was like a public relations manager, and that's who I was in the community. And underneath that was, who I really was, but actually that didn't mean anything to me. It wasn't anything of value to me. It was actually my identity was who I was out in the world. So, yes, after that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's such a familiar story, how we carry those beliefs and we just replicate the pattern and the habit, don't we? Mine was the same, or some versions of it, definitely. So yeah, I think quite familiar to people. Yeah. And so was there a pivotal moment then in that journey, or a time when you realized, hang on, this isn't working for me anymore?
I think there was various ones. Like there was various ones where things came to a head, in a marriage, when I had kids. That was very stressful for me, and I lost my identity from my work. So I became quite, I suppose, stressed out would be the word. But, I kept keeping on. And essentially, I think what happened was when I really hit the skids, because I think it was like building, like over many, many years, until actually my marriage failed. And then that was okay for a while. And I still was, keeping going, keeping smile, keeping up, pretending, I think, that everything was okay in the world. And that was a massive thing, is pretending that everything was okay. I'm the cool one. I'm the one who can take everything in their stride. Not letting my family or friends know what was going on for me. That was, a problem. And because they didn't know what was going on. So my marriage failed, and then eventually I moved. So I moved from my home of 20 something years, and I moved to a city, which was lovely, and there was no problems with that. But when I got here, I had fun for a while, but it was just another mask. It was just more pretending that everything was fine, because I didn't know what to do for my work. I didn't have any confidence. It sort of just had evaporated. I had moved, so it's a massive grief of moving. Yeah. And I was just keeping things afloat, but I started making my life really, really, really small. So I was retracting and not letting people know what was going on for me. I was feeling really unwell. So I had started having physical problems, like fatigue, thyroid problems and stuff like that. But I just kept pretending to everyone that everything was okay. But in the end, my world got like about, the size of my room. I, take the kids to school and do things, but I wasn't. I was totally lost and totally depleted, physically, emotionally, and mentally.
Yeah, wow. I feel that. Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely, mine went similarly with my physical health. And it is interesting sometimes when we most need other people and we most need help is often when we reject it the most. As you're saying, you just kind of, you shrunk your support network and your network of people smaller and smaller. And is that out of shame about it, or just not knowing what to do about things? What do you think was the driver for that?
I think in like hindsight, it was shame. It was really shame, because shame loves to live in the dark, and it loves it, and it feeds upon itself, I think. But I wouldn't have called it that then. I was just sort of saying, like pretending that's what I would have thought, that, everything's okay, and not letting anyone ask me any questions about it either. It's sort of like, don't go there. Don't go there.
Yeah.
Don't ask me how I am, because I've always been fine and I'll be fine. But, obviously I wasn't.
And if we've got less people around, then there's less people who we have to pretend for, I guess, because it's so exhausting and we're in a state of fatigue anyway.
Yes.
And then that wearing all those masks is exhausting as well. I know from my experiences, and I'm sure you're the same. So if we had got less people to perform for and wear that mask, it's a little bit of a safer option in that moment, I guess, is sort of the knee-jerk reaction there. And yeah, I'd agree that, the shame just sort of flourishes in that environment. And I definitely recall, much more than with my burnout, but when I used to have anxiety for years, I couldn't even say the word to people that I felt anxious. It was like this dirty word. And it just had such a stranglehold on me because of that. Now I'm in a place where it's what I do. I teach people about it because I've changed that relationship with it. So your world's getting smaller and smaller. You're getting physically run down. You're worn out. You're depleted. You're covering up all the time. What changed that helped you get out of that place?
Yeah, I think it was like, finally, I was trying to pinpoint the moment, and I think it was just one day, I was quite low, and I just let a friend in, who wasn't this was my MO, people who I didn't know really well, I would be happier to let into my area. And they said, well, why don't you do this, personal development course? And I'd done it before, and I thought, oh, well, why not, And from then, it's like, I started, it was like me saying yes, starting to say yes to things again. And so through that, I think the main change, I guess, was I actually started sharing again with people. So that was, how I started like taking the little steps to come out again of where I was. So I started sharing what was going on. I had to, I think, it's a bit blurry now because but I had to start, really like actually talking to people again, sharing, but also apologizing for shutting them out of my life as well, even though they didn't feel like they needed that, but I felt like I needed to make amends and actually find out what it was like for them to be with me. And that really, I think, hit home for me. So that really helped. So that then I was able to begin to start like looking after my health, like to have a change of tact with my health. And now also looking back, I think this is quite interesting for, say, the people I work with, is I could see that also some of my health issues were coming from going through perimenopause. So there's some changes that happen there as we're going along, that in your 40s you can actually start heading towards menopause, so you can start having these symptoms as well. So it's sort of like some perfect storm of a divorce and moving and all these things. So then I got back and started walking was my savior as well. Walking and going to nature. So it was really connecting with all the things that I love, which was walking. And then something I also started connecting, I guess, with my spirituality, which meant like asking for help from a higher power. So you might call it God or whatever, but I just sort of call it source. And so that actually helped, so I don't have to do all the heavy lifting.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a very nice perspective on it. Yeah. And yeah, you've made a few great points in there, definitely. And I think sometimes it can be confusing when we have physical changes happening at the same time as these emotional and mental loads. And you're right, you know, so much change can be a reason for burnout, and particularly when they're big changes and changes that we haven't necessarily wanted in some ways, you know. Things like your divorce you might have wanted in that moment, but we don't go into a marriage hoping to be divorced. And a massive move is big and traumatic for us, even if it's what we want. And then it can be confusing as to, is this a symptom of I'm feeling more mentally like I'm not coping, or is it a perimenopause symptom? And they can kind of all just confuse and capitalize on it more. And it's interesting, and I'm not surprised by this at all as I record more episodes and with more guests, that the same sorts of messages come through from people sometimes. And so I want to reiterate that every time, of starting small. So, you know, you didn't just suddenly wake up one morning and it was all solved. And as much as we wish it was like that, it isn't, is it? You know, none of these changes are.
Yeah, Shireen, I did some days wake up thinking that it would be all solved. And that's what I hoped for. And I felt like I was back quite a few times. Like, honestly, I thought some days, yes, I'm back. You know, it feels like me again. And then, you know, then it sort of just didn't go anywhere. So then I felt like more ashamed, especially if I'd shared with people that I was feeling like I was better, or, you know, like I'm able to be in the world again. But yeah, so it's like, yeah, it is small steps, and it is like, you know, getting a few steps in together, like, you know, actually, you know, making it a line of it, or you know, getting it all and together,
building on where we're at. And I think
that's exactly the words.
Having compassion for that when it doesn't all go as a thing. And I think particularly when we have a history like you shared, like mine, where it's about our efforts, how we're valued. So it's like suddenly if it's like, well, I was 3 steps ahead and then now I feel like I'm 2 back, it kind of cuts into our impression of our worth again, or it can, if we're not careful of that. And we feel like we're going backwards. I know sometimes I'm still like that now, because we always have ebbs and flows in our journey. And you know, I'm like you, I've done lots of the personal development stuff, and sometimes I still have crappy lows, and I'm like, I thought I'd done enough, this is so shit, am I back where I was? And we have to just remember that it's a new level, and so there's the problems at a new level. And I think it's a nice reminder. And there's a really beautiful bit you explained about how you felt you needed to apologize to the people in your life. And I think it's about, at core of that is about when we take responsibility for our lives. And to me, that's in essence what you were doing there when you said that was really for you. And I think that's so important, is that when we go, hey, crappy things might have happened that led to me being in this place, but if I want to come out the other side, I need to take some responsibility. Is that
Most
sort of
definitely.
some of what would be there?
Yeah, definitely. And especially after you've had like a bad marriage, you know, like a marriage that had finished, is like, it's easy to blame someone else, but you know, there's 2 people in that. So yeah, it's really important to take responsibility. I agree entirely. But also, like what you said there, we talked about, I think there's layers too. So as you go along, there's like, life's always unfolding, and there's layers to what we're ready to deal with, you know, with our past or whatever's inside of us. So yeah, it's sort of like the onion skin. So you can only get to that next layer often when you've taken the layer before it off. So, I mean, you know, I'm still seeing it, you know, self-worth is always my big thing, my Achilles heel, but yeah, as we go, but that's okay. You know, I know it's there. And I've got to say, being mindful or bringing mindfulness to my life has really helped as well. So that's, you know, that's the noticing and catching the moment. So when you're actually going to react in that certain way, or, you know, like get into the space where you might be down, or react in some way, I now can try and catch the moment. So, and just like be mindful of it. And then you can actually make a decision on where you want to go from there, not like that usual spiral.
Yeah, beautiful. Such a great tip. And I wonder, have you got any other tips for people of how you now avoid going back into burnout?
Well, I know my things that are really important to me. And that is, keep sharing, keep being with people, because often I can go regress, but actually I'm an extrovert and I love being with people. So I've got to make sure I keep being with people and sharing and what's going on. And keep dealing with, healing. So that means the body and, your mind and your soul, really. So keep, doing processes that, it might be going to see practitioners, it might be going to see the naturopath, it might be going to see a doctor, all of those things to keep your body and mind and soul working well. So it's like honoring yourself in that way, not putting yourself last, I guess. Yoga, stretching my body, and because there's a mindfulness to that as well. Walk and being in nature. I've got lots. I've got a few.
Perfect.
Yeah, but being in nature for me is just so important. So I just get really connected. I notice things. I get lessons from nature when I'm in it. So, and I find that invigorating. So, especially when you have lots of screen time or you feel really stressed. And everybody's probably got something like that. They might want to go to the sea, or I can go anywhere in nature and it helps me. And being mindful is one of those things.
Beautiful. And I think it's nice to be mindful of the good moments as well, so we can capitalize on those. Hey,
most definitely. I think gratitude or appreciation is one of the key things as well, because there's always, particularly of these last events of the last few years, it's pretty easy to get sucked into feeling pretty sad or bad, down on the world, but it's pretty beautiful, I think. So being mindful of that.
So beautiful. And I think that's a nice sort of point as we start to wrap up, to remind people there's always stressors in our lives. There's things that can cause us stress, and my takeaway from what you've shared is really of having our awareness and our mindfulness to catch those moments when we're going down that slope. And then you've got your toolkit of things to help you. And it's just about diving into that and finding the tool for in that moment that's right to help get us back on track. And I think that's a beautiful reminder. And it's so adaptable for people. If yoga or nature or whatever isn't their thing, find your things and make your own toolkit like you have, and draw on those to kind of hook us back out when we need it. Yeah, so valuable. Thank you so much for that.
That's okay. What are yours? Can I ask you what yours are?
A lot of mine is about finding balance. So overworking and overdoing is my downfall. So when I try and people please and perfectionist and all of that stuff. So it's about taking time away and resting for me. And it's about having boundaries is a big one. Like I do not work, even though I work at home for myself, I don't work of an evening and I don't work on weekends, full stop, non-negotiable. And I kind of have, it's like a protection zone around me almost, that I allow myself to have these things now to keep that balance. That's probably my biggest thing. And of course I have some stuff that fills my cup too. Like you, I love to hang out with friends or just have a day doing nothing at home with the family, or going to the beach and doing some reflection for sure. So remembering to do those things. Absolutely.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing today, Kath, and thank you for being on the show.
If
anyone is interested to connect with Kath more, learn more about what she does, work with her, just follow her on the things and learn stuff. I'm going to share all the links in the show notes, but it is katherinenewland.com is where we'll find you. And you also have a beautiful Facebook community, Women's Midlife Collective. And so you can join that group as well, which is where all Kath's juicy stuff goes on as well. So all the links will be in the show notes. Is there anything else you wanted to share of where people can find you or anything like that, Kath?
No, I'd just like to say though, if anyone wants to reach out, if they're, anything, but midlife women, please just, connect with me, because I'm keen to meet them and have a chat. So
perfect. Thank you so much. It's so generous and such a beautiful gift that you offer people. in helping them to find some direction in the next stage of their life. So thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for sharing about your journey and some of your tips and tricks to help other people who may be kind of stuck in that burnout stage and thinking they are all alone, because they're not.
They're not.
Yeah, we've been there and we can come out the other side. So thank you.
Most definitely. Thank you.
Awesome. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Stay tuned for next episode in a fortnight. And until then, keep listening, subscribing, and following along. Thanks, guys. Well, that brings to an end today's episode of Crash, Burn, Rise Again. It's been fantastic to have you with us today, and I hope you can join me next time. I also hope you've really enjoyed and maybe even learnt something today. What I ask next is, if you're loving what you're hearing, please subscribe on whatever channel you normally listen to your podcasts, or on my YouTube channel. And you can also follow along and find all previous podcast episodes on my website, recastcoaching.com.au. If you're enjoying the podcast, the other thing I'd love is if you can share and recommend to any friends, family, and colleagues who you think would benefit from a little bit of crash, burn, rise again. Thanks so much, and until next time, bye for now.